deepened, particularly where the interests of powerful members are at stake. In the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, recent setbacks have served to highlight that the security situation is fundamentally no different than it was 20 years ago, when the largest and most expensive United Nations peacekeeping mission was first deployed. This has exposed neighboring states, notably Rwanda, to cross-border attacks that are entirely preventable. There is an urgent need to find the political will to finally address the root causes of instability in Eastern DRC. The blame game does not solve the problems. These challenges are not insurmountable, and solutions can be found. This would ultimately be much less costly in terms of both money and human lives. Despite shortcomings, there are examples to demonstrate that international cooperation can successfully address the issues that matter to all of us.
On another hand, President Paul Kagame commended the global health efforts to fight HIV, tuberculosis and malaria, which have helped fight countless lives in Africa and beyond, while also strengthening health systems.
At the recent Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali, leaders adopted an ambitious program. Global health is a case in point. The Global Fund to fight HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria has helped save countless lives in Africa and beyond, while also strengthening health systems. I hope that all countries will respond strongly and sustain their commitments at the 7th Global Fund replenishment session, chaired by President Biden later today.
Also, the president hinted that Rwanda and the African Union are working with different partners, especially BioNTech and the European Union, to bring end-to-end vaccine manufacturing in Africa.
Africa is doing its part, but must do more. For sustainability, external funding must go hand in hand with increased domestic financing for health. This is a priority which the African Union is tracking on an annual basis, and which I'm honored to lead on behalf of the organization. We are also working with partners to bring end-to-end vaccine manufacturing to our continent, notably through collaboration with BioNTech and strong support from the European Union. This is critical to increase Africa's resilience against future pandemics. I commend the Secretary General for convening the Transforming Education Summit earlier this week. The future of billions of children and young people across the world depends on overcoming the challenges of inclusion and quality of instruction, particularly as we recover from the pandemic. Away from the headlines, the United Nations and other multilateral institutions retained the ability to set an agenda around which we can all rally.
President Paul Kagame also called for the UN member states to continue investing equitably in emerging technologies and prioritize the creation of digital jobs because the global future is digital, and this step will address the human capital investment gap that separates high and low income countries.
At the recent Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali, leaders adopted an ambitious program of action, including special instruments on living lands, sustainable urbanization, and child care protection and reform. We also agreed to prioritize public-private partnerships to create digital jobs for young people across the Commonwealth. The future is digital, and transformation is happening now, as evidenced by ongoing work of the Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development and the Smart Africa Secretariat. High-quality digital jobs are a practical response to the underlying drivers of irregular migration by closing the human capital investment gap that separates high and low income countries. To ensure that the benefits are equally shared, we must continue investing equitably in emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence. In the area of peace building and counterterrorism, regional initiatives can complement the important work of the United Nations. Regional and bilateral initiatives have been proven to make a big difference, whether in the Central African Republic or the successful engagement to contain violent extremism in northern Mozambique, conducted by Rwanda and the Southern African Development Community. If this approach were tried properly in DRC, as proposed by the Nairobi process, it would make difference. However, to be sustainable, such efforts require consistent financial support from the international community. A lot is at stake, and time is not on our side. We cannot anticipate or prevent every crisis, but we can be better prepared to react quickly and effectively when needed, especially if we work together.
Rwanda has started administering the COVID-19 vaccine to children aged between 5 and 11 years, and it is expected that over 2 million children will benefit from the drive countrywide. According to Dr. Tarsis Munga, the state minister in charge of primary health care, government is administering the pediatric formulation of the Pfizer vaccine approved by different regulatory bodies, including Rwanda Food and Drugs Authority. He said vaccinating children against COVID-19 is already ongoing in other countries. The rationale is to protect the wider society from further pandemic impacts by closing the immunity gaps in the population. He added that vaccinating children from 5 to 11 years reduces circulation of virus in the community and limits the risk of further outbreaks in both healthy people and those vulnerable to severe COVID-19, such as pregnant women and older adults. Statistics from Rwanda Biomedical Center indicate that as of September 18th, among the 132,488 cases of COVID-19 reported in Rwanda, children aged 5 to 11 years were 4,358, representing 3.3% of total cases. Vaccination will mainly be done at schools, and according to Munga, the Ministry of Health is working with schools to ensure children pick up the consent forms, take them to their parents to sign and return them to schools or at the designated vaccination centers. Information from the Ministry of Health indicates that while COVID-19 tends to be milder in children compared with adults, it can make children very sick and cause children to be hospitalized. In some situations, the complications for infection can lead to death. The National Ebola Task Force has been reactivated and put on high alert to monitor cases of Ebola that have been reported in the region this week, according to the Rwanda Biomedical Center. This follows a case that was reported in Uganda's central district of Mubende, where a 24-year-old man was diagnosed with Ebola after presenting symptoms and later died. A month ago, another Ebola case was confirmed in Beni district of North Kivu in DRC. This case was confirmed 6 weeks after another outbreak in Equatorial province of the same country in July. However, the Director General for Rwanda Biomedical Center, Claude Mambo Muvunyi, says there is no call for alarm because Rwanda has since 2018 built strong systems to counter Ebola outbreak and that their preparedness teams have been reactivated. Rugarama market traders claim that water enters the markets during the rainy season, causing them to lose money due to the high level of water that prevents them from selling anything. Rugarama market is located in Rugama sector in Ruera district. People who sell their products on market floors rarely sell anything during rainy seasons because they do not have anywhere to display their merchandise. The district authorities said they will work with residents to build waterways so that rainwater from areas surrounding the market does not enter.
Economic news is a regular feature on Radio Imanzi.
The Rwanda Stock Exchange Market Report. The trading session recorded a total turnover of 4,068,000 Rwandan francs worth of bonds traded in one deal on the fixed income market and 170,000 Rwandan francs from 1,000 Bralirwa shares traded in one deal on the equities market. The equities counters closed with Bralirwa at 170 Rwandan francs, Bank of Kigali at 272 Rwandan francs, I&M Bank at 43 Rwandan francs, Simirwa at 120 Rwandan francs, M10 Rwanda at 176 Rwandan francs, Equity Bank at 440 Rwandan francs, Kenya Commercial Bank at 370 Rwandan francs, National Media Group at 1,200 Rwandan francs, Uchumi Supermarket at 104 Rwandan francs, and R8 Buffalo closed the counter at 526 Rwandan francs. The currency market review of today. The Kenyan shilling buying price was 8.5 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 8.7 Rwandan francs. Tanzanian shilling buying price was 0.44 and the selling price was 0.45. Ugandan shilling buying price was 0.26 and the selling price was 0.27. Burundian franc buying price was 0.49 and the selling price was 0.5. The US dollar buying price was 1,029 and the selling price was 1,049. The British pound buying price was 1,170 and the selling price was 1,193. The euro buying price was 1,025 and the selling price was 1,046 Rwandan francs.
Some items of international news on Radio Imanzi.
Speaking at the 77th session of the UN's General Assembly, Macky Sall, the Senegalese president and chairperson of the African Union, insisted on the threat of terrorism. He said terrorism gaining ground on the continent is not just an African matter. It is a global threat that falls under the primary purview of the UN Security Council, the guarantor of the collective security mechanism under the UN Charter. Sall also reiterated his call for a better representation of the continent on the world stage by reminding of the request for the African Union to be granted a seat within the G20 so that Africa can at last be represented where decisions are taken that affect 1.4 billion Africans. Kenya's President William Ruto says he is seeking to improve the bilateral trade relations with the U.S. and establish new relationships and strategic partnerships with American business people in his efforts to improve the country's economy. According to a statement by State House, the president, who is currently in New York City for the United Nations General Assembly, was hosted to a high-level business roundtable by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, a lobby representing American businesses and organizations. Mozambique and Tanzania have just signed 2 cooperation agreements in Maputo with a focus on combating terrorism and fighting crime. The agreements were signed as part of a 4-day official visit of Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan is making to Mozambique. In addition to fighting jihadists, President Philip Nyusi said the 2 countries were currently focused on the exploitation of hydrocarbons, which form the building blocks of vital energy sources like coal and gas. President Samia also highlighted the need for both countries to strengthen security because of the extensive common border they share. Nigeria is battling its worst floods in a decade after heavy rains across the region. At least 20 people died this week, according to authorities, and more than 300 people were killed in flooding incidents so far this year. The floods have affected 500,000 people across 27 states. The Disaster Management Agency is warning of serious consequences in the coming weeks as 2 dams have begun to overflow. With that, we come to the end of tonight's edition.